You're writing an assignment in English. This is for those of you that are writing a dissertation or an MA thesis or a BA thesis or a seminar paper or an internship report, any paper that you have to write in English. I've added to this channel many videos that explain what you have to write first. You are welcome to watch them, and I think it's a good idea to watch them. I explain how you write an abstract at first, then a table of contents, then you are ready to divide the assignment to sections and subsections. I also had a video explaining how you write the introduction. And now I want to focus on the next big challenge, which is writing a descriptive section, or in some cases, several descriptive sections. This is the topic that we will address today. My name is Shai Dotan. I'm Associate Professor of International and Public Law at the University of Copenhagen Faculty of Law, and the purpose of this channel is to help you improve your English and your research skills. I want to start my explanation of what you should strive for when writing a descriptive section with a short story. When I was serving in the Israeli Defense Forces as a prosecutor, that's one of the jobs that I had in the military, I was located in an office in one part of a city, and the court was in a completely different part of a city. I didn't have a car, I didn't have a driver's license, and in order to get there, I had to take 3 buses, which would take quite a long time. And many times I would decide to just spend the whole day at the court and find an open table, sit at the secretariat of the court, for example, which was very illuminating for many respects. And sometimes I had to work in the morning in the office, and they would just call my office and say, come to court as fast as you can. And what I would do is I would print out a series of documents, and then I would just go bus after bus. And as I was on the buses, I would go through these documents, which basically describe the case and mostly the profile of a person. And I would basically try to arrange in my head what I'm going to say to the judge when I get there, when I get to court. Little did I know at the time that this was actually an excellent exercise in becoming a scholar, because what I was doing when I was going through the buses, and I had a mass of information, all kinds of relevant numbers and years and events, and my job was to try to figure out how to arrange a small portion of his facts, which I will serve to the judge during my argument. And what I realized was that as a prosecutor, I'm obviously always required to say the truth. I'm not allowed, of course, to lie. I can only base myself on true facts. And I also have some obligation to give a fair description of the case, even more so, I think, than a defense lawyer. But at the same time, I have a lot of freedom to determine which facts I should focus on, what order I should put them in my argument, and how, in which light, in which perspective, I should present them to the judge. And this is something that I want you to keep in mind when you write your descriptive section. You are not allowed, obviously, to lie, to falsify the facts, but you are exposed to a very large amount of facts. If you're writing, obviously, if you write a dissertation, you would read hundreds of books and papers. If you write a thesis, a little bit less, but you read a lot, you have a lot of material in front of you, and you have to pick and choose. What material will you focus on? What order will you put the things in, and how you will describe them? And why is that so important? Because when you are writing a thesis, especially if you're not a native speaker writing in English. Writing a very good theoretical section is very, very hard. Today, it may be easier to do that using ChatGPT, that can, with some minimal prompting, produce paragraph after paragraph of perfect text. But if you're not using that, either because you want to preserve the originality of your ideas, or because you want to, keep your own independent mind, or because you're not allowed to do so and you want to keep the rules, which is obviously a good reason, you will have to write the theoretical section by yourself, and that's very, very hard. I say that from experience with many, many students, that I have the impression that maybe not just a supervisor, but also the censor. In Copenhagen, we have another person who is an outsider reading the assignment. Now, they are usually not even an expert on this particular issue. They have trouble admiring the complexity of your theory. And the result would be that they would give you a grade to a large extent based on the descriptive sections. So you would, and of course, the abstract and the introduction are crucial because this is really what sets the entire topic in the mind. But after that, if you want to earn extra points, descriptive sections are very, very, very important. They are easier to write, they're easier to engage with, and most importantly, if they are written properly, they convey your message to the reader without any need for a theory. It's been said about the greatest theoreticians in law that they write descriptive sections in their papers that are so good that after you don't need to read the rest of the paper, you're already sold, basically after you read it. Without a hint of theory, nothing looks speculative, nothing looks like an argument. It's just that the way they characterize the facts lead to the result that they want. And that, of course, was exactly what I was striving for when I was working as a prosecutor. To present the fact in a particular way that would lead the judge to make the decision that I thought was appropriate from a perspective of prosecution. So that's exactly what you are striving for. And because it's easier to do with than in a theoretical section, there's less room for error. In theory, sometimes it goes horribly wrong when you start to spiral in paragraphs that get really complicated or go around in circles. You can avoid that in the descriptive sections and use them to your advantage. So it's a very important tool that you want to master. Now, I want you to distinguish in your minds between two different kinds of descriptive sections. One is a situation in which you're writing a mostly theoretical paper and you're providing the facts at the beginning. Most of my papers, the papers that I published, looked like this. So again, I'm trying to jump a little bit to the arena of published scholarship, and then we'll go back to a paper that you write as a thesis. So most of my papers would be an abstract, which I try to make as good as possible, an introduction, which is crucial, and I try to make as good as possible, and then a short descriptive section or part, which would be sometimes just 1 page long, sometimes 2, 3, 4 pages long, in which I describe the facts in a way that is designed to basically sell my idea to the reader without saying a word of theory. And then after that, in most of my own papers, it's just theory, 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 theory after that. Sometimes, of course, with some examples and case studies, but most of the theory follows there. Now, writing a thesis like that is challenging. It's challenging, especially for non-native speakers, but I've seen it done, and I've seen it done well. And I think it's one of the most rewarding type of thesis to write, because you're really engaging with ideas at a high level. It's not just a matter of, putting in the hours of making the description. You're really thinking through a new idea. So if you are writing this, what you would do is, I recommend, after the abstract and the introduction, you write the descriptive section, which would be relatively short. Let's say, if it's a thesis of 50 pages, then it should be no more than 5 pages. It can even be 2 pages, but somewhere in this area. And then afterwards, you will have the theoretical sections, and within them, of course, you will have examples. And as in most legal assignment, you would have references to judgments and so on. The second descriptive section is should be viewed more as a case study. So that's a situation where most of your assignment is, the quality of it is a description. You are adding to the listener, to the reader, with the facts that you bring to the table. And then you would write abstract, introduction, a short theoretical section, and after that, basically very, very long chapters of description. I think there are more theses that are built like this. It's a way that minimizes your chances of getting a very bad grade in the case of a censor that gets upset because they don't understand your theory, or the theory really did spiral out of control and wasn't that clear. In law, there are whole books that are written in this way. Very short theory at the beginning, mostly presenting your own methodology or your own perspective, and then long chapters describing the facts in a series of case studies. Now, a case study like this is a very different animal of a descriptive part for the thesis that is theoretical thesis. In a descriptive part for a theoretical thesis, you're trying to describe all the facts that are relevant for your analysis in the thesis. In a case study, you are describing a certain particular slice of the facts that you find relevant. It can be a particular country in a particular time, in a particular topic of the law, for example. And then you would basically describe the facts there. So it's longer sections, it's sections that are divided across these thematic lines, but the same logic applies, which is you're describing the facts with a certain argument in mind, and you are doing that without mentioning the argument. That's exactly the issue. You try to avoid mentioning the argument, but just describe the facts in a way that leads towards the argument that you're aiming at. So that's the difference between a descriptive section at the beginning of a theoretical paper and a series of case studies in a paper that is mostly descriptive. Now that we know what is your goal when you write descriptive sections, let me say a little bit about how you can reach it. What you need to do is you need to first of all understand that you have three things in mind when you are approaching the writing. So, which facts are you going to present? First, what is the order in which you're going to present it? Second, and which way you will use to describe it. This includes how many words you will spend on it, what citations you will add, what kind of analysis you plan to do there, and so on. Now, it's in your hands to make this choice. You can determine all the answers to all of these three questions, as long as you're not saying anything that is incorrect, and of course it serves the general project of your thesis. Now, what I recommend for you to do is don't start writing immediately. That's going to be a big mistake. Once the text starts to accumulate, it's very, very difficult to run through it and improve it. I have had many students who would just, run forward and would write sometimes dozens and even hundreds of pages if you look at the dissertation, and then it's very difficult to trim it back. Now, as a supervisor, I very rarely notice that people are really, really struggling because we don't start. So I just say, okay, just start to write and we'll deal with this problem later. Even if I know that erasing things or rearranging them will be difficult. But in almost all cases in which I don't foresee any irregular problems of writer's block, I would just say plan first, thoroughly. How do you plan? I recommend that you take any descriptive section, whether it's the descriptive section at the beginning of a theoretical paper, which is easier to write, is relatively short, or case studies that are longer and require sometimes weeks to write, especially if you're in a dissertation. And then you would divide it to as many subsections as you can, even if these subsections would not appear in different headings in the final assignment. And then what I want you to do is to write bullet points. So you would write a dot at the side or any mark. You can also use numbers if you find it easier. I think it's, in many respects, more practical even to use numbers. And then you write in a free hand the text that you want to put there without stylizing it. Now, the purpose of a bullet point is that you would write it and highlight it in a certain highlight, or color it in a certain color, or put in bold, underline, italics, whatever method makes you understand that that's not the text that you will actually submit in an assignment. This is just a way for you to organize your ideas. And as such, it allows you to move the bullet points around very, very easily. Just rearrange them again and again and again. This is a very powerful tool. It resembles, as I said in some other lectures, the tool that was used in the past, before the age of personal computers, where people would write specific cards to any idea in the assignment. They will have hundreds of these cards, and they could continuously rearrange them in different ways. Because this gives you the capacity to rearrange ideas without going into issues of style and grammar and how ideas connect to each other. So use this opportunity to plan very, very well. Before you write the descriptive section or case study, all the ideas should be written in very, very clear bullet points. And then the writing becomes much easier. As you start the process of writing, I want you to imagine that you're in court. And let's say you're a prosecutor and you have a very, very aggressive defense lawyer in front of you, against you. And every time you make a statement that is not directly supported by evidence, this lawyer would scream, "Objection." Why do I say that? Because the main problem that we have when we write descriptive sections, and I say we because it applies to me and to you and to everybody, is we assume too much knowledge for our audience. That's something that Steven Pinker calls the curse of knowledge. And it's something that we have ingrained within us as human beings. Just like Steven Pinker relates a story of babies who would hide behind let's say a black screen. They realize nobody can see them. Inside a room, they see somebody hide a candy behind a cushion. And then a child enters the room, and even a baby, not even a toddler, a baby, would immediately become agitated and not understand why this boy is not going to the hidden candy. Now, we are smart enough to understand, even the baby probably understands in a way, but the child cannot see the candy. It's not in its range of vision. But it can't comprehend, as a baby, that the child does not know that the candy is there. Now, it sounds very funny to think about it this way, because of course an adult will not make the same mistake, but we all make the same mistakes as writers when we basically assume knowledge that the audience doesn't necessarily have. We know the facts, we know what's coming on page 57 and what is inside our case study, but we didn't say that. And your job when you write is not only to say all the facts that are necessary for the uninitiated reader, but also to say them in an order that would keep this reader without any logical leaps or without any missing information as they read along. That's why I say, imagine you're in court and the other lawyer would just scream that every time you make a leap like that. So it's not enough that the case study of 20 pages will contain somewhere all the information that is necessary to make the argument. It is also essential that the information that is necessary to understand page 10 would appear in page 9 or 8 or 7 and not in page 17. That's exactly the point. So the order is very, very important. That's the first thing. You have to give all the information and you have to give it in an order that prevents any logical leaps. The second thing I want you to remember, to imagine that this lawyer would do is this defense lawyer would scream speculative, objection, Your Honor, speculative argument every time you integrate your theory into your case study. Now, there's nothing wrong with theory. Most of my papers are theoretical, almost all of them. And as I said, I encourage also students to write theses that are theoretical, but they don't belong in the descriptive sections. The descriptive section has to be clean from the theory, because if you integrate the theory there, in a way you are misleading the reader and you are misleading yourself. You are saying something that is an argument, maybe even a valid argument, maybe an argument that is a logical deduction. Presenting it as a fact is something that you should never do. And that's why Imagine This Lawyer is screaming speculative every time you say the theory. So that's why you have a descriptive section, whether it's at the beginning of your assignment, if it's mostly a theoretical paper, or a case study that is clean from your own theory. And that's how you proceed. Now, as I said, one of the reasons I really like descriptive sections and I like students to invest a lot of time in them is because once you follow these simple rules in terms of the order in which you mention things, you make the choice, you write no theory in descriptive sections, it's very easy to follow. You can write it well and you can get a good grade. And what I want to say is I want to encourage you as students, if you are a student, to really focus on the task at hand and focus on getting a good grade. And I say that because I myself knew that I wanted to be a scholar at a very, very young age. But I think one of the things that helped me was that in every assignment, I really tried to make the assignment itself according to the relevant rules. So I never thought, okay, how do I make papers out of it and become famous? I would say that I did that even with my own PhD dissertation, which today I unfortunately have to advise most of my students not to do, because when you finish a PhD and you do the publications, you're never going to get a job, not even the most basic postdoc. But at the time, I basically wrote my full dissertation for 4.5 years, and only afterwards I started to write papers. And this gave me really the possibility to write these assignments within their own set of rules. And if you are writing a thesis, seminar, a paper for your for law school, or the same rules probably would apply in several other faculties like political science, international relations, and so on. I want you to basically try to think about the examiner and try to see what the examiner wants to see. What does he or she expect you to do in this assignment? And this would really, really help you along the way. Now, what I say may sound trivial. You may think, oh, all students want to get a good grade. Yes, but when we get carried along with a task, we often forget about our final goal. And I stress that many, many times in another video that I have on this channel on how to get good grades in exams, where people just don't remember that the purpose of the exam is to get a good grade. And this applies to every step of the way towards the submission. And that's why they make foolish mistakes. It's not because they don't want a good grade, it's just they're not focused on that across every step of the way. And that's exactly what I want you to do. So focus on an assignment and try to get it right. If you're going to ask me, how does this particular class apply to assignments that you publish or to just publications later on, I would say that the differences are actually quite small, and that's another benefit here. So also when you write a paper or even a book, you need to write descriptive sections, you need to write them well, you need to organize the facts well, you need to keep them clean of theory, and most of these things apply very well. And that's why if you write a thesis, you learn the method that you can use to apply it, and if it's really very good, you may even have a possibility to publish it later on. That's all for today. I am Shai Dotan, and I would ask you as always to subscribe to my channel, to like the video and to comment if you have any ideas you want to share with me. Thank you and keep learning.